Yeah, hello students. Good afternoon to you all, and a very warm welcome to Jindal School of Government and Public Policy's open house, which we fondly call as JSGP here in Jindal. And this open house is specially crafted for the postgraduate students who have joined here with us, with their parents and friends and their other colleagues to gain in-depth knowledge of public policy and about MA in economics. It is very exciting to be a part of this open house, and I am glad to announce that we at OP Jindal has covered or done over 100 more webinars during the last 45 days. It's indeed a great journey so far. And today we are again privileged to have the Dean himself and the bigwigs from JSGP. And the Dean himself is Professor R. Sudarshan with other senior faculties here, Professor Rajiv Malhotra, Professor Swagato Sarkar, Professor Bhuvneshwari Raman, and very young Professor Devajit Jha. We welcome you all, and they are in constantly touch with the students over webinars or through online classes that we have been doing during the last 40-45 days, and we are continue to do the same in the coming weeks or days. So now I request other students who have joined us to post their questions here so that we can read it out between the sessions, and we will also take up the questions after or during the last half an hour of the open house. So now meanwhile I'll request Professor Sudarshan to take over and introduce faculties also. Over to you, sir, please.
Thank you, Hemant. I'll introduce myself, and when faculty speak, I'll request them to introduce themselves a little bit. I first want to say that the OP Jindal Global University is a very special university, which is why such an assortment of people like us have come to join it. It's really extraordinary, the range and the kind of people who've joined the university, which is only 10 years old. And the university in these 10 years has acquired a standing that it's credited with an A grade by the Accreditation Council. And it also has been selected as one of 8 private universities for the distinction of an institution of eminence. So therefore, this university does not necessarily have to toe the line of the UGC in terms of what is required for the completion of degrees, what kind of courses and degrees that we can offer. All of that autonomy and independence has given a lot of room for creativity on the part of our faculty across the university, which has now 9 schools. And the school where we are now, the Jindal School of Government and Public Policy, was started in 2012. The first school in the university is the law school, and in the time that it's been in existence, it's now rated as the best law school in the country, and it's a large law school. Then there's a School of Business, a School of International Affairs, then the School of Government and Public Policy, and we were followed by a School of Liberal Arts and Humanities, a School of Banking and Finance. We have a new school on environment and sustainability. So that's broadly the university. Now, government and public policy as a new school is a very pioneering and path-breaking initiative taken by this university. And the reason that it is so is because the MA in public policy, which we are now offering and have been since 2012, is the first of its kind in the country. Public policy is known. Of course, every country that has a government and a state has public policies, but public policy as a subject of study has not taken hold in India till we started it. And the reason for that is because there's been a general assumption that public policy need concern only those who've already joined government and come to policy making positions within the government, at which point they think about what are the sort of basics of public policy, and may go to a mid-career program of a year's duration at the most, or shorter, in the, say, the Institute of Management in Bangalore, which has a Center for Public Policy or Public Affairs, or to the MDI in Gurgaon, or some online courses. All of that is possible for those who are already in government, and that's been what has passed for public policy. My colleague Rajiv Malhotra, who has been a policymaker in the government, in the finance ministry, will have a little more to say about what policy making actually involves. But we started the program in 2012 because it seemed like the time is ripe for many more students, not just those already in government, trying to get a grasp of what public policy is. And also because the government had opened up in 1991 the kind of early policies of our government, which was very, very state dominated, with the state holding what is called the commanding heights of the economy, were all relaxed. And the state itself began to realize, as all over the world, that governments need to reach out to people outside government for specialized knowledge, for advice on policy related issues, to do a lot of analysis of data and evidence. So one of the concerns of modern governments is that they must make policy after weighing the evidence. So those who are in the business of collecting data and analyzing evidence are not necessarily within the government. They are outside the government. They are in universities, in think tanks and places like that. And there's also a greater awareness, particularly in the British Commonwealth colonial forms of government, which we inherited, that the public does matter when you formulate public policy. And therefore, be able to reach out to NGOs, to organizations, civil society groups that are in contact with ordinary people and the general public, or different publics. There's no one public. Every population group in the country, young children, young girls, young boys, women, old women, widows, any population subgroup is a specific public, which in the context of a particular public policy will have to be taken into consideration. So for all of these changes that have happened, we decided that in this university, it's a good idea to start a master's in public policy. And among those who was the first faculty to join us is Shugato Sarkar. So you're lucky here that he's with us, because at the conceptualizing of this new school, he was there. Now, having started the MA in the public policy, later on, after our institution of eminence gets formalized, we could call it Masters in Public Policy. But till that happens formally, we have to call it MA Public Policy. That's the UGC's peculiar requirement. But actually, it is a Masters in Public Policy, and you'll hear more about what it is that you will learn when you take up that course. I also want to take this opportunity to introduce the other new program that we are starting this year in August, which is the MA in Economics in our school. And it's going to be a very distinctive, different program from most master's programs in economics around the country, because one, it's located in a school of public policy, and secondly, it is a program that is got the benefit of being designed freshly, and it's being designed in the context of many developments that have happened with the discipline of economics itself. After the 2008-2009 financial crisis, a lot of people began to ask, why was this not predicted by all these brilliant economists around the world? And now that's a bit of an unfair question, because the strength of economics as a discipline is not necessarily in predicting what might happen. It's like any other discipline, it's an understanding and explanation of why things are the way they are. But there is an element of predictability in human life, which econometrics and techniques in economics can capture, to the extent there are predictabilities in human life. But there are lots of unpredictabilities in human life, and to that extent, you cannot expect any discipline to come up with predictions. So whenever people say, oh, people make jokes about economists who say after 2008, 2009, what economists have done is they have brought a degree of respectability to astrology. But that's not a fair comment. So what I want to just hint at is I studied Masters in Economics from the Delhi School of Economics. And before I came to do that, I did an honors degree in economics from Bangalore University. And that was the time when economics was beginning more and more to use the language of mathematics. I say the language or the vocabulary of mathematics, because economics is not mathematics. But it was then when I started, a trend had begun where some degree of using calculus, matrix algebra, and so on was coming into fashion. But now we've reached a stage where a lot of the literature in economics is actually written in that language, which is why those doing the BA economics in our university, as well as those doing MA in economics, will, when they graduate, be very, very comfortable with that language. And so they will be able to find anything written with equations very intelligible, and may be able to do that themselves. Now, what I want to say is, when I went to the Delhi School of Economics, the subject of economics was perceived somewhat theoretically, that it's a subject with a long history, and as it has evolved, as it became more and more rigorous, there was a lot of emphasis on theory. And so when I did my MA in economics, there was no course on the Indian economy. There was no discussion of the National Sample Survey and data of that kind. But we did very sophisticated econometrics. Some of my teachers are stalwarts in econometrics, Professor Nagar, Professor K.L. Krishna. There's a theorem named after Professor Nagar called the Theil-Nagar theorem in economics, econometrics. Our teachers in social choice theory, Prashant Patnaik, and for some part of my study, Amartya Sen himself, were pioneers in the discipline of social choice. That's related to welfare economics. But again, discussing things in like voting behavior, all of that. So my point simply is that the MA economics in a public policy school is, and public policy itself, is very practical and practice oriented. So we are an ivory tower where you learn esoteric things and great knowledge. It's possible, by the way, it's possible for those who graduate in our MA economics to go on to become economists in their own right, contribute and become proper academics, teaching the subject if they so wish, and advancing the discipline in its theoretical frontier. That's possible. But our emphasis really is on applying knowledge for practical purposes, for the purposes of policy making, for making a difference to people's lives. So I studied economics, and I was very, I got through the MA economics in Delhi School of Economics, and said, I know very little about the Indian economy or anything practical, right? That was behind my mind. Luckily, I got a Rhodes Scholarship at that time, and I went to Oxford and completely switched. I said, I've learned enough economics after this MA, taught by great teachers. So I did a whole year of philosophy, and then I had 2 more years of the scholarship. So I decided to do a master's degree in politics, as they call it in Oxford. They call it political science in other places. And then I got a research fellowship in Cambridge. So I went from Oxford to Cambridge. So I'm one of those who doesn't think of one or as the other place. And I did got interested in constitutional law and spent the greater part of my fellowship years in Cambridge studying constitutional law and looking at how the Indian Supreme Court has handled legislation that has to do with the economy. Any legislation that has to do with economics, how has the judiciary or the court grasped it, and what kinds of decisions have they made on it? After that, I joined the Ford Foundation in India and worked for about 8 years as a program officer in human rights and social justice. And then I joined the United Nations Development Program in the India office, and then moved to the Indonesia office, and altogether spent 22 years in the policy division of the UN, working on governance, justice, rule of law, those kinds of policy areas. And then in 2012, by a quirk of circumstances, I joined the Jindal School of Government and Public Policy as its first dean. So my background is really in policy making, major philanthropy, and policy making for the United Nations Development Program. And so I would say, having joined here and completed 8 years, that this is the most interesting, engaging, and the best job I've had hitherto. And that's partly because it's the kind of opportunity where you can reflect upon what was done earlier, things that you learned about the economy, economics, as well as public policy, and then contribute with a great set of colleagues to fashioning a very exciting program. And I must say that this is not a static program. We revisit the curriculum. We take advice from people outside our university on where the emphasis should be, what new courses to introduce, and so on. So that's a little bit about me and why I came to join this school. I'd now like to invite Swagato Sarkar, who joined in 2011 when the school formally got established and the teaching began in 2012, to tell us a little bit about how this program in public policy has come about. And after that, I'll request another senior colleague who also joined with me in 2012 and who's been a policymaker and instrumental in persuading the university that we should also, alongside MA in public policy, have an MA in economics, and that would be Rajiv Malhotra. And then we've got two other colleagues, Bhuvaneshwari Raman and Devajit. I want them to focus a little bit on some special features in the two respective programs, in public policy and in the new MA economics program, how it will be taught, what might be its special features. So I invite Swagato to take the floor.
Thank you, Dean. So hi everyone, good afternoon. So basically when we started MA in public policy, there was no such institutions in India. As Dean has mentioned, there were a couple of places which were training bureaucrats, mostly the officers from the Indian Administrative Services, to have some hands-on training, and most of them would also go abroad for the training. But there was no MA program or any master's level or undergraduate level program which will give you an entry into public policy making. So when we came in, we thought that this will be a program which will be basically an application, a broad application of many social sciences. And so what it was designed to is to give you an entry point into the development sector and policy making. Before that, we had pathways which would give you an entry point. Say, for instance, in India, we had a very long-standing MA in social work, MSWs, programs, Tata Institute of Social Sciences, Delhi School of Social Work. All of those are very well-established places which gave you an entry into the development sector. But most of the time, it would train you into the skills of interventions and give you and basically will go and work in the NGOs or today what we are increasingly hearing about these frontline workers. So most of it will train you to be so. Then there was also development studies, and I come from a development studies background. I also have the social work background, so I know what they taught us, which was more about the skills of intervention. And in development studies, which was much more academically oriented, and it tries to understand development as a process. So it looks at the critical understanding of development, what it does. But it doesn't so far, the emphasis is not so much on development of various skills. So when we started thinking about MA in public policy, we brought these two things together, that a critical understanding of the field and also certain skills that you require, which will then allow you to intervene into the policy making. And that led to this, the structure of the MA program. We also looked around the various public policy schools in the public policy as a discipline in various other countries is quite well established. And when we tried to look at those and thought that what will be our model, then we immediately realized a problem which Dean Sudarshan has mentioned, that policy making used to be a sole prerogative or of the bureaucrats or people in the state, occupying state offices. Not outsiders had very little influence over that process. Now that I think the situation also changed after liberalization. What had happened is the market came. We had great expectations from the market in generating welfare, in self-regulation, all of that. What we have seen that somewhere it failed. So the scope of the state then came back, so to speak. Now the role and the scope of the state had to change. It was broadening. There were more in the meanwhile in India in the last 20, 30 years, there was a vigorous change in the democracy. We became much more democratic as a society. So there was pressure from the public to participate in this developmental process, to have certain say. So what we saw is reorganization of this field of public policy, where the state is there, the role and scope of the state had to be rethought. There were various organizations which came in, which didn't exist earlier. There were always NGOs. There were multi and bilateral organizations like UNDP, which Dean Sudarshan had worked in. There were organizations like Ford Foundations, which also didn't work. So those organizations, but you had an addition of the corporate sector, their lobby groups. Then you have the think tanks. You have various organizations which were solely focused on various other types of research, not necessarily intervention. So then we saw a transformation of the Planning Commission, which became more like a think tank in the form of Niti Aayog. So all of a sudden, this entire structure started changing. And then we thought the course in India is required, which is going to bring this critical understanding from various social sciences, but at the same time, also impart certain skills which you can carry along with you, so that it makes, quote unquote, to make you job ready. So as a result, when we structured the course, it had three components to it. The first one was the core courses, which were basically the theoretical courses. And it involved a course in ethics and philosophy, in economics, which is very important. And then you have politics and law. And then you have sociology and anthropology to understand the society and the cultural movings and so on. And then there's a long list of electives, which allows you to develop specialization in a particular field. My colleague, Bhuvneshwar Raman, will talk more about that. And then we had a much more hands-on approach where you get an exposure into the real life of the work, which is both in terms of our internships. We have a very long summer and winter breaks. So we make use of that. There are 3 such opportunities that we have in 2 academic year. Students get 3 opportunities to go and do internship. And then they have the opportunity to do what we have developed, something called capstone, where you work full-time with an organization under the supervision of someone from there. Sometimes these capstones are also, they pay you stipend to take care of your expenditure. Other option, if you think that you would like to go for further studies or you want to develop certain more knowledge about a particular area, we also offer you the opportunity to do a dissertation, to write a thesis under the supervision of a faculty. Now, in all of these courses, what you have is our curriculum is, as Dean said, is dynamic. We rework it. It's not a stale like most of the Delhi University or even the place that I studied in Tata Institute of Social Sciences, where the syllabuses are very stale. There's a 20-year-old syllabus, and teachers also come with the same set of notes, and they will just read those out to you, and in a very boring fashion. So what we did is not only the structure, but also how we teach. I think that's something we innovated, and being a private university, that allows us to do it. So most of our classes are extremely dynamic. It's smaller in size. We don't have huge number of students. Generally, our student sizes are about 30 or so, and with the possibility of expanding it to 50 or so students. But most of the time, we have been getting we have about 30 students. So it makes it very intensive. Most of the students have opportunity to be mentored by a faculty member. There are much more interaction in the classroom. We have various case studies. The students have some say in what they want to study within that, and so on. Plus, what we also do is that we have a large number of, most of the courses that you will do will not have simply an end semester exam, which means that throughout the semester you don't actually take care of it, and then you prepare for an exam. So our curriculum or pedagogy is not exam oriented in that sense. We have a lot of assignments, both individual and group assignments, where you develop your analytical skill, you develop your writing, which in most of us, as we have all suffered as students, nobody taught us how to write, how to present. So we put enormous emphasis on developing your academic writing. We have a separate school which takes care of that, and as a student you will have a paper on academic writing. So you have skills, and those are the skills which can help you in developing your career, because you become much better. You can articulate your ideas better, you can write better, and then, as I said, that you have a lot of assignments spread throughout the semester through which you can learn. You get enormous. All faculty members are going to give you feedback on all the assignments. That helps you in your learning. It also helps us as teachers to keep a tab on you, that how you're progressing, who is enjoying, who is not, who is learning, who is not falling behind, and then what kind of intervention we require as faculty members. That being the academic part of it. The other thing which you also get in a university like this, and why you should choose a private university over a public university, is simply that we also, you might find that our fees are relatively higher than public university. Number one is that we are not supported by state or anything, so that will be high. But what you get in return is also something that you will not get in academically, as I said, that you get more attention of the teachers, you get large number of academic resources, library, etc. Plus, what you also get is we take great care of both the physical and the mental well-being of our students. You get there is a deep sense of empathy and care that the institution takes in caring about our students. We ensure that none of our students suffer from because it's a residential university, you will be away from your home and so on. So we take great care of nurturing you, and I would say that way it helps in a all-round development. And then obviously we have an excellent career placement cell which takes care of your various internship, and at the end of everything is your job, so it takes care of that. So I will stop here and let my colleagues come back.
Yeah,
right. Thank you, Mr. Gato. So may I now ask Rajiv to tell us a little bit about why did he give up or stop doing policy making in the Ministry of Finance? I rather wish that there was Rajiv Malhotra and a few others like him now, today, in the Finance Ministry, considering the challenges that the economy is facing because of the COVID-19 pandemic. So it is a loss, I'd say, to our national policy making capacity that Rajiv left the government and joined the Jindal School of Government and Public Policy. So it's our gain, obviously. But it would be nice to know what's so attractive about us lot here, that he gave up what you might call the position of power in South Block, North Block, all of those power centers. Over to you, Rajiv.
Thank you, Dean. Good afternoon, everybody. It's a pleasure to be part of this webinar today and have this opportunity to speak to you. So I will answer Dean Sudarshan's question as to why I left what he thought was a lucrative assignment. Indeed, I think professionally it was a very fascinating assignment. I was at the finance ministry and I was advisor to the finance minister when I left that place, and chose to join the Jindal School of Government and Public Policy, even as it was being established in 2012. Well, let me just tell a little bit about my work experience, and then I come to the inclination and why I switched my career. So I have been trained as an economist with a specific interest in macroeconomic issues in development policy. And I studied in Delhi, and I also had the pleasure of going and studying in LSE. So from Delhi School of Economics, like Sudarshan, I went to LSE to study economics. And I have been lucky to be a part of the policy making process at the national level for more than 2.5 decades. Primarily at the Ministry of Finance and also at what was earlier called the Yojana Bhavan, which now has changed itself and has become the Niti Aayog. So I spent a lot of time there, and this gave me the opportunity to look at the policy making from two different perspectives. One is the plan part of our development process, which is what Yojana Aayog was spearheading and was the apex body in that sense, insofar as our planning system in the country was concerned. And then I came over to Finance Ministry, where I had an opportunity to work on more here and now issues, more short-term issues, and basically work on macroeconomic policy making in the country. But I was also fortunate to work outside the country with the UN system, like Dean Sudarshan, in various capacities. And I spent about 6 years as a staff member in UN system in Geneva. And since that particular tenure in the early part of this millennia, I have been working with different UN organizations on specific areas of interest. So my expertise or work experience, so to say, extends from macroeconomic issues in public in development policy, but I also have worked on human development issues, and more importantly, on integrating human rights in development policy, which is what I did when I was working with the UN. So at about 50, when I turned 50, I thought it was time to rethink what I wanted to do in life. And being a part of a policy-making process actually always keeps you very close to academic development. In fact, I strongly believe that a good policymaker has to be in touch with the state of art in the academic field that he is working on or is interested in. So in my case also, I had been reasonably, I would say, in touch with the academic developments in my specific areas of interest. And when the time came for me to think whether I wanted to do more of the same thing being in the government, I chose that one should start afresh, have an opportunity where I could recharge my batteries, so to say, in an academic environment among people, among young students, and among faculty members from diverse disciplines, backgrounds, understanding, knowledge. and seize that opportunity to kind of rediscover, enrich myself, and do whatever I wanted to do in the context of policy making, not necessarily by being in the government, but helping that process from outside the government. And so I chose to come to the Jindal School of Government and Public Policy. In fact, I and Dean Sudarshan walked into the institution on the very same day at about the same time on the 1st of August in 2012. So it's been 8 years of journey. I've been teaching certain economic courses, macroeconomics, public finance related courses in the master's program in public policy. I've also taught some economics courses in our undergrad program. But let me now come to the issue that I wanted to share some thoughts on, which is our new master's program in economics, which we have decided to launch as of 1st August 2020. I want to just highlight a few things about this program. Of course, my colleague Debajit would subsequently go into some more details. But the first thing I want to highlight is that it has taken us 8 years since we started the School of School of Government and Public Policy. It has taken us 8 years to feel, let's say, confident enough to launch a master's program in economics. In other words, we have taken this time to prepare ourselves, both in terms of the resources that we need to run a good master's program in this country, which involves software, which is the faculty. So we have been conscious of the fact that the quality of a course really depends on the kind of software you bring into that. And we have taken care in terms of building our faculty. We are now about 25, 26 people strong, covering diverse areas of specialization in economics and also other social sciences, because we are a part of a school which runs a public policy program. But my point basically in respect of MA economics was that we wanted to be sure that we are fully prepared in terms of the resources we want to put forth for running a good MA program. So it has taken us 8 years to start it, even though in between these 8 years, we did manage to start a BA program in economics or a PA economics honors about 4 years ago, and with the relative success. But we felt that this was the opportune time to start this program. Now, what is so unique about our MA program in economics? And I believe that this program fills a very important gap in the way postgraduate economics studies are taught in this country, and in fact, for that matter, elsewhere in the world. Let's look at it from our perspective, our country perspective. The first part that I would like to highlight in terms of filling up the gap that I foresee in higher education and economics in the country is the sheer size of seats available at postgraduate level. It is not surprising, therefore, the large number of Indian students who have to pursue economics at a postgraduate level are actually forced, in a sense, to leave the country and even settle for second and even third-rate universities abroad, just because there aren't enough seats available in good institutions in the public as well as now in the private sector, which have a good master's program in economics. So we are actually conscious that that is one gap that has to be filled. The second and more important gap is about how economics at that level has to be taught. Of course, there's a lot of change in the discipline that has come about in the last few decades. And Dean Sudarshan was mentioning how economics was taught when he was studying the master's program at the Delhi school. And since then, there has been a lot of change. Some change has been for good, and perhaps some not for good at all. So the point there is that any good program has to keep pace with the changing context, the development and the changing needs of the society. And often one has seen that in the public universities, there is a certain amount of inertia which sets in when it comes to reviewing, revising, refining, and introducing a new sub-disciplines, so to say, within the discipline that one is engaged with. And that is very true about most public universities in India. So the second major gap that our MA program tries to seek is to strike not only a good balance between what are the classical paradigms in economics, but to bring a good balance between, let's say, the orthodox and the heterodox tradition in economics, and prepare economists who can tackle what I say the 21st century problems. And when we talk of 21st century problems, there's so much of uncertainty around, and nobody had thought that a COVID-19 like situation would one day arise. And we thought this was something that was seen only in the movies or read in the books. But here, this is the reality. So the kind of changes and the pace of changes that this century is going to witness, partly also on account of technology, artificial intelligence, ICT, and other technologies coming into play, there's going to be a huge amount of change, and a change that would also bring in a certain amount of uncertainty. And we in the academic world have to prepare, not only anticipate and then prepare the knowledge base and prepare the people who can manage that in terms of delivering the needs that the society identifies from time to time. So in that context, we are trying to build a program at the master's level in economics, which does prepare and balances these different traditions in economics, and strike a balance between what is required on the emerging side and what the classical tradition brings in. It was Keynes who, first of all, and now that has become a kind of a methodological approach that any new social scientist would follow. So talking of Keynes, it was Keynes, when he came up with his general theory, he wanted to he was forced to first establish what a classical economist talked about or thought about, in order to show what his theory, by contrast, was trying to say. So this tradition of trying to balance different schools of thought, different thinking, philosophical thinking, methodological traditions in the subject has to be interwoven in a fine balance. And I believe the way we have structured our program, we are trying to just do that. We have pitched our curriculum at a global level, and so we want to incorporate the good influences that are coming from that end, but we also want it to be contextually relevant in the part of the world where we are, and where there's a lot of need for skills and knowledge set to bring about the kind of transformation in those societies that would be socially desirable. One or two other points, brief ones. One salient aspect of our course is that we have integrated a provision for writing a thesis, and it serves a twofold purpose. Of late, one has noticed that students who have done masters in economics, many of them actually want to go out and work in the economy, and there's a huge demand which has suddenly surfaced for such students. Now, what is the kind of work they do? The kind of work they do is analytical work on the economy, on specific sectors, on understanding the data which is getting generated in huge amounts, and making sense of that data to then guide and fire social responses and market responses of the kind that would be of the interest of the society. Now, if there is a demand for such kind of people in this economy, then surely the institutions who are teaching this discipline must prepare them. And we believe that having a thesis component allows you to do that. I mean, one can choose a thesis on a very rigorous academic topic, but one could also choose to write a thesis on an applied issue which improves your knowledge base, but at the same time creates a very tangible evidence for you to use as you enter the job market. So just by integrating a thesis, a scope for writing a thesis in a master's program, we are not only creating a better platform for those who want to take time off or simply do masters and get into the act of working and being part of the economy, for them to be well prepared. But at the same time, the thesis also offers an opportunity for those who want to pursue serious academic careers in the discipline to validate their interests and also create evidence for strengthening their applications for going elsewhere after having done a master's program here and exploring other options elsewhere. That apart, the fact that our MA program, and that's my last point, the fact that our MA in economics program is actually anchored in a public policy school has its own share of advantage. The kind of environment the public policy school provides is a kind of a ready check on the way the discipline has to evolve, because of course we need knowledge for the sake of knowledge, but we also need knowledge which can be put to use productively, constructively in solving the problems that the society faces. So I believe that having the master's program with its unique curriculum, which you will shortly hear from my colleague, and having it in a public policy school strengthens the way we think the discipline of economics should evolve and address the concerns that are being put at its door almost on a very regular basis, and we have seen the kind of issues that globally economies are now tackling. So the advantage of having the school in the public policy, having the program in the public policy school has a lot of strengths. It also gives options in terms of a large number of elective courses which span different disciplines, and in that sense provide a more rounded up exposure to the subject and its application in the larger social causes. Let me stop here. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rajiv. That was very interesting. I found what you had to say interesting, even though we've been living through this. I'd now like to invite Professor Bhuvaneshwari Ram to speak to us.
I think, sir, I beg your pardon. There are so many questions that students have posted here. By virtue of yours and Swagato and Professor Rajiv's detailed and beautiful introduction of the course, they must have got their answers. But I'll anyway read out those questions.
No, wait a minute. No. I'd like Bhuvana and Debaji to.
Yeah. So meanwhile, I'll request other students to post their question here.
Yeah, you hold your guns for a bit because we want to round off the description of the two programs, and we've got a general overview of MA Public Policy and the MA in Economics. What are the distinctive features? Now, I'd like to invite Bhuvana Raman to speak to us because there is this emphasis on research in all of our programs. Now, Bhuvana herself has a very interesting career, having started out as an architect. And she's also an alumna of the London School of Economics, as is Rajiv. Swagato and I share a relationship with Oxford University. Bhuvana went to LSE, and did sociology and did her doctorate degree from there. And she's a key person in the university, not just in our school, but across the university for the PhD program. She runs courses for doctorate students who in qualitative research methods. And so I want her to embellish a little bit about the research component, especially the experiential learning opportunities in the MA Public Policy program. And then I'll invite Debajit, who's been innovative in his thinking about pedagogy and economics, to say a little bit about what we might expect is very distinctive, even research-wise, in the economics, MA Economics program. So over to you, Bhavna. Bhavna, we can't hear you.
Your voice is breaking.
Can you do something to toggle? Maybe you go off. Yeah. Bhavna, if while you're fiddling, we can hear you.
Yeah. No.
Yeah.
Go ahead,
Okay.
please.
Thank you all for this opportunity, and thanks for all the participants for being here. Before sharing my experience on research, I would like to bring in why I moved into public policy school and how I moved in. As Professor Sudarshan laid out, JSGP is the first professional school to impart a training in public policy. It departs from the US model, which has a dominant political science focus, or the UK model with its focus on social policy and economics. Our program has an interdisciplinary focus. Why is it important? Here I would like to bring my own experience with research. As Professor Sudarshan introduced, I'm trained as an architect in a school which was set within the engineering college. So our introduction and assumption was that we can have technical solutions for every problem that we face in society. And when you take the domain which I work and specialize in, it's in urban planning and development. As all of you might have heard, that our cities are so bad, it's so polluted, it's so congested because we don't have a proper planning. We were also taught that. We were taught with the assumption that planning is a technical skill. It can be learned through mastering certain skills for projection, predicting, and then arriving at solution. This is pretty much the foundation for most modernization disciplines, which includes political science or economics, or then public policy, or the natural sciences until the early 90s. But then we now know that we no longer live in a world where things are very certain. We do not know what the risks are. We have also been told that it's better to anticipate uncertainty and anticipate how to adapt to new risk or mitigate new risk. Coming back to my own experience, I started as an architect planner, and we realized our first puzzle when we entered the professional world. We realized planning is not just a technical process, it's more a political problem of allocation. And the allocation here is to do with land, which is implicated in wealth generation. So a lot of the process of how planners work and how planning decisions are taken are invisible. It also straddles across a number of disciplines. You need to be aware of economics. You need to be aware of how land markets work. You also need to be aware of how land politics work, and also how our societies are structured. None of it was taught to us in our planning school. Then from working in an urban development authority, I ended up being head of a habitat and infrastructure division for a bilateral program, which is where the height of politics started, because you're involving the politics is not only about how resources are allocated, but also about how law gets mobilized to achieve one's interest. What this various experiences showed us was that an interdisciplinary understanding is very important to unpack any phenomenon, to understand how things work in our world. And to extend it further, I went to LSE to do my PhD on urban development. And one of the first problems that we had is, where do I locate in that school? Because urban development as such is an interdisciplinary field. And my thesis cut across anthropology, political science, and then it's about developing country. So my committee was drawn from geographers, a specialist, a development specialist who worked in the South, and an anthropologist. And the anthropologist was who's a renowned anthropologist in the world, told me, better don't locate yourself in anthropology. You'll never clear your PhD. Do not go to geography, you will have the same problem. Go to social policy, simply because it's an interdisciplinary field. It can understand and accept any interdisciplinary positioning. Now, I narrate this because one of the problems we had, not only me, but all the PhDs across LSE at that time, was the limited focus on interdisciplinary aspects. So in PhD, we were all left to struggle to understand how other disciplines work, because none of the disciplines were structured in that way. You register for a PhD in geography, you will be taught all the theories of geography, but you wouldn't know how economics and geography intersect. So this is the first point we had, like Swagato explained, that increasingly we recognized and the school placed emphasis on interdisciplinary focus in its curriculum. As he explained, the curriculum itself is broadly on three aspects, which is conceptual, which draws on the knowledge from various disciplines, economics, philosophy, politics, and most importantly, ethics, because after all, we need to be careful about what kind of society we want to create and how do we place it. Now, the knowledge about society, i.e. research, comes from these various disciplines. Think of, for example, COVID-19. And prior to COVID-19, we had 3 pandemics in this world, and the third pandemic was the bubonic plague in the late 19th century and the early 20th century. How did this world acquire knowledge about the plague? Because the bubonic plague also cut across 10 port cities. So it was just not an epidemic that was confined to one geography, but it cut across different cities. So what led to the pandemic across the world was the contribution that came from history, historical research, contribution that came from medical anthropology, medical science, and also the Epidemic Act was enacted in 1894. So you can see, when you have to tackle any one particular issue, you can't have a linear understanding of a discipline and resolve it. And that is with that idea, the conceptual emphasis in our curriculum draws on basic concepts across different disciplines. And essentially our emphasis is to make one understand how does the state work and what are the workings of the society. When we talk about how does the state work and what are the workings of the society, particularly in our context, the whole post-colonial context, we cannot rely on knowledge that was created in the West and given to us. A lot of our theory and policy pretty much doesn't work on the ground, particularly in speaking about urban policy. It doesn't work on the ground simply because we are recognizing that our understanding of how the world works is not accurate. We need much more research to understand everyday workings of our society and everyday workings of our institution. So the next emphasis in our program is on developing research skills. When we talk about research skills, it spans across both having skills of working with numbers, because you often have to work with large data, you're dealing with a large population. You also need skills in understanding people, in understanding their relationships, social relations, in understanding what makes them connect to each other, what works and what doesn't work, what can lead to the division within a society. And that requires research skills drawn from different disciplines, including anthropology, sociology, and historical research. So we have an extensive courses on quantitative research and qualitative research. And to be a good researcher is also about being able to articulate one's finding, being able to articulate and frame problem in an accurate way. And therefore, the writing and the reading are part of a skill development program, skill component of our curriculum. Finally, you have to be a generalist. In today's world, you have to be a generalist. You need to understand how a particular phenomenon is influenced by different forces, as well as you also have to be a specialist. Yeah? And therefore, we have the specialization within specific domains. Particularly in JSGP, we are developing specializations around health, which is fairly in an advanced stage. We are trying to develop specializations around environment. And also, if someone wants to be an economist, you can go into econometrics. Now, in terms of pedagogy, which is where research plays a major part in the way we impart our education, is that every course plays an emphasis on experiential learning. And we also have certain applied courses, say, for example, qualitative research. A qualitative research course is not just about lectures. Students are expected to do a small research project of their own. We also have opportunities to extend the knowledge that they gain, the knowledge and the skills that they gain through their regular class sessions by participating in extension work. We work on research projects with communities around our own university, and this is done both at the school level and at the university level. You can either work with faculty, individual faculty, and associate yourself with the research projects that they are conducting, or you can, the school also, at the university level, there are research centers where you can associate yourself. There's also a student-led research center at the university level where one can have an opportunity to undertake research. And finally, there is this journal. The school runs a journal, and we have opened up in the past a section for student-led publication. So one has an opportunity to expand on their research skills and publications via the school journal too. And these are the few things that I would like to lay on, and I would be happy to take during the question.
Yeah, thank you, Burna. Thank you. That is extremely useful. Just as a point of information pertaining to research, I want to say that our university has a policy where it provides stipends to students who assist faculty in their research or their teaching, and also in research projects that faculty may have. Many of our faculty have grants from within the university to take up research, but they also have grants from outside the university, such as the Department of Science and Technology or the ministry or the state government in Haryana. So any of those research projects, they can provide some opportunities to our students to assist in that project. And the amount that is payable ranges from 5,000 rupees a month to 10,000 rupees a month, depending on whether the student already has a fee waiver and the extent of involvement that the faculty can give them without, of course, compromising the student's own interest in completing their courses and finishing what's expected by way of credits for the degree. So this is a unique feature. I don't think many universities offer a stipend to students for participating alongside senior people in research work. So I wanted to underline that and say there's a lot of hand-holding and a lot of learning that happens through that means. Now I want to invite Devajit to tell us you know, a little bit about his background, why he joined us, and also the thinking that he's been doing about how economics should be taught after all these developments, the blend of the orthodox and the heterodox that Rajiv referred to that will characterize our MA Economics program. Over to you, Debajit. Can't hear you.
Vijit, your voice is not.
Okay, so so I'll want to go off of this screen, and because of my slow internet connection, so it will be much easier for me, I think. So fine. I initially started. In my academic career, I have done my PhD from Center for Economic Studies and Planning in Jawaharlal Nehru University. And initially I joined as a faculty in one of the government colleges in West Bengal, and then for some years I taught there different courses, and then I also worked in the administration, especially the administration of education, so education administration in the government of West Bengal. And I also spent some time there, and then I thought, okay, it is again my academics is calling, so I again went back to academics. And then after finishing my PhD, so I heard about this university, OP Jindal Global University, where so different kind of courses being offered, very different kind of flexible environment is there, flexible academic environment is there, flexible academic teaching is there. So so initially when I was in a government universities, all these kind of things were not there. So even if you try to innovate, you'll not be able to innovate because of certain kind of restrictions there in the university setup or in the government education setup. So in 2017, I applied here and I joined this university, and the kind of thing that I thought before joining that a place, ideal university should give me in terms of the innovations and teaching, the flexibility of teaching, that kind of things are there. So so there is a brief background of my academic career. So and I think I should talk. Professor Malhotra and Professor Sudarshan has talked something about the economics program, the MA economics program that we're going to introduce this year. And I'd like to focus on some historical aspects that why we are so how when we designed this MA economics program, then how we thought of designing a program. So what was going on in our mind when we were thinking that what should be the ideal content of our economics program at present. Professor Sudarshan has already pointed out that after the global economic crisis in 2008-9, there was a huge change in the way that economics was being taught earlier. So and there was a sections of policymakers, academicians, the students. They have demanded that okay, that there was two major problems in the global financial crisis in 2008. One is definitely what Professor Sudarshan has pointed out, the predictability of the crisis. So basically the economics profession, especially the macroeconomists, they couldn't predict that when this recession is coming. The second point that has where economics has been specially criticized during that time, the recovery period, that it has taken a huge time to recover. Even now, even some of the economists haven't recovered from the crisis that has happened during that time. It is more than 10 years now. So when we thought to launch a new economics program or master's program in economics, then we first tried to understand that what kind of rigidities in the traditional courses of economics that is making our economics course much more rigid, and which is compelling the economists to, or those who are or getting the training in economics. So which kind of things are getting them in a kind of kind of a nutshell, that they are not even being able to do their work. So a kind of work like predicting the crisis and how to recover from a crisis. So all of these kind of things. Then so when we try to understand that how we should design a course in economics, then we first ask 3 questions to us. First question is, what students are learning now. If a student is doing their master's program in economics, then the traditional courses worldwide, how we are teaching the economics to the students. Then the second question that we ask ourselves, that what students want to understand. So a student is a representative of the present world. So how they look at the world, and which are the questions that we should address in our economics program. And third component that we ask ourselves, that the kind of problem that the economy or economies around the world are facing today, then to address those problems, what are the key concepts in economics that we should incorporate in our course, so that we can so a student who will enroll in our program and get 2 or spend 2 hours in our program, so will be equipped with those kind of toolboxes, so that they will be able to understand or maybe better understand the actual or actual world scenario, or what is happening around the world. So to deal this kind of things, so first the kind of, say, if we look at what is being taught in economics at present, then we will understand that basically the neoclassical paradigm in the international scenario, that is dominating the entire economics profession. So basically here the main assumption is there is a representative economic agent, and that agent has full information, that is an agent know everything about what kind of things he is doing. Then he's a very rational person, so he always try to maximize his benefits, and then he's a forward looking person. Then he makes a decision as consumer, producer, or whatever. Then the second component of the traditional economics, that how we teach economics to the students at present in different parts of the world. So it is a assumption of a competitive, idealistic kind of a market, and we assume that this competitive market coordinate between millions of atomistic agents through prices. So if whenever there is a, say, kind of a change in prices, so we get a signal that okay, something is there, maybe demand is more, or maybe supply is less. So this kind of thing. So based on these competitive markets and the signal of prices, we try to understand in the traditional way of teaching in economics. But then there was some economist group after the world economic crisis. They have come up and they surveyed in a large number of universities to the students, and they asked in their first day or in their class that what are today's really interesting and vital problems of the world economic policy. And when that data has been collaborated, and then we found that people are thinking that inequality is the bigger problem, unemployment is the bigger problem, then poverty, then inflation, so sustainability of the world, and climate change, all these kind of issues students want to know, or maybe the representative, we can say that the representatives of the present world wants to know or wants to learn about these things, and wants to find out the solution, that how we can manage, or how we can lower inequality, how we can lower poverty, how we can lower unemployment rate, all these kind of things. So then we try to understand. So basically students want to know that why inequality is increasing, say why a large number of the population in different underdeveloped countries are still poor when some other countries are enjoying so much prosperity in their life. So this kind of things, to address this kind of things, then we identified some of the concepts like strategic interaction, then limited information, principal agent. So these particular concepts are available in economics, but in advanced courses, but not in maybe MA level or undergraduate courses. So first, what we have tried to do, we tried to bring the higher concepts in much more lucid way so that our MA economics students can learn and understand these concepts, and we try to incorporate these particular issues in our within our courses. So and then we try to find out that to learn these particular things, like why inequality is increasing, why there is a sustainability issue in the world, why unemployment is increasing, then we try to find out that, okay, that wealth creation may be one of the basic issues why inequality in the world is increasing. So maybe unemployment is due to, say, incomplete market or credit market constraints. So there may be some constraint in the financial market as well. So all these kind of things we have incorporated in our master degree program, in our Masters in Economics program. So and we divided these concepts into different courses. So we are offering 12 core courses where traditional micro, macro, statistics, mathematical economics, then development economics, all these kind of courses are there. So there are 12 core courses, and a large number of electives are that we are trying to offer. Okay, one more thing that is very important is basically from the beginning we have given a huge emphasis in our game theory program. So why it is important? Because game theory shows the interaction between people. So it tries to understand in a mathematical way how people interact. And since all these outcomes like inequality, poverty, unemployment, since all these things are the outcome of human interactions, so we have given huge emphasis in our on game theory in all of our programs, especially, say, for example, in our undergrads program, which is running now. So in that program as well, there are two different courses, full courses on game theory. So this is very unlike to different universities in India and around the world, where game theory is taught only in master's program. So in this way, we try to bring innovations in our teaching program, so say even if I talk something about the elective courses that we are going to offer, then there are very interesting elective courses like empirical development economics. So nowadays, say there is a huge change in the way that we used to think about development economics, or we have taken training initially in our master degree program of development economics, which was much more theoretical in nature. So now at present, say the empirical economics has become much more empirical. So empirical evidences are collected, then randomized trials are run, and we try to get certain kind of policy tools from there that if we do this kind of intervention, then we'll get this kind of results. So that entire thinking about development, the way we used to practice development economics, that has changed. So in our program, we are offering empirical development economics as an elective. Then behavioral economics, experimental economics, time series analysis, then industrial organization, economics and social networks, environment economics, labor economics, growth economics, all these kind of things are there in our course, which are very unique to many other programs in different parts of the world. I think I should end here, and if some other questions are coming, then I'm going to discuss those things again.
Yes, now I think we've provided a very comprehensive overview of the two master's programs, and we've also hinted at some of the opportunities there are for experiential learning, practical learning, research in the course of the program. Our students, as was pointed out, have opportunities to go and do internships inter-semester, and we have a range of excellent institutions which have taken our students as interns. the capstone project, which Bona referred to, is an important component of the public policy program. We will develop similar opportunities of hands-on learning with institutions in the MA Economics as well. What I want to say is that our school and department and the university as a whole is well connected to a number of institutions where our students have found it very interesting and engaging to work. It also paves their way for their career prospects, whether it is in consulting organizations like Ernst & Young or government think tank now, which is the Niti Aayog, in places like that. But we'll come to these things in a more specific way while dealing with now, for the remaining time that we have, the questions that Hemant has collated for us. And depending on the question, one or the other will answer it.
Yeah, sure. So there are so many questions, and so many questions are clashing with each other. So I'll read out only those questions which are specific. And the first one is from Shreya Ray. And she has asked about, since it's the first batch of MA Economics, how will you ensure that graduating students have access to the best PhD programs outside India? And she has other questions as well. So I'll just read out those questions once we have answer of this.
All right, can I ask Debajit to answer that? Is he there? Debajit? Rajiv?
Well, one important aspect to the PhD application process is the faculties who are teaching you and what kind of experience they bring, both academic and research. And on both these counts, I think we have a faculty which would be able to measure up to the expectations that a graduating student would have in terms of being facilitated into a good PhD program anywhere in the world. So what I'm highlighting basically is the research that the faculty is doing and where they have picked up their degrees. These are two very important, and the kind of research networks that they are part of, these are the elements which kind of support a successful PhD application insofar as the institutional context of that process is concerned. Of course, it would ultimately depend on how well you do in your program at the MA level, and if you do well in the course, that becomes an additional reason for you to find good options anywhere in the world.
Yes, sir.
So
the second part of our question is,
yes,
yeah, please, sir.
Go ahead. No, what's the second part?
Devajit wanted to add something.
No, the question, Devajit, was how can we be confident that someone in the MA Economics in our school joining in 2020, when they graduate in 2022, that they would be welcome into any of the top PhD programs anywhere in the world? What gives us that confidence?
Okay, so one kind of evidence that
Rajiv's addressed that in a very important way, which is to underline the fact that we have faculty who've got PhDs from some of the top universities in the world and have done research work that is respected around in the discipline of economics, and therefore anyone regarded as a student of such faculty already stands in good stead. As I wanted to you to elaborate a bit on this research emphasis.
Yeah, so I'd like to give some evidences that so from our BA Economics program, how students has gone to very high standard or high ranked global world universities in US and in different parts of the world. So when our students graduated in our undergrad program, so some of the students say last year, some of the students has gone to universities like University of Pennsylvania, then Boston University, then London School of Economics. So all these are very high ranked and very reputed places to study economics. So even this year, some of the students has already got admission to University of Boston, then Rutgers University, then London School of Economics. So all these kind of things are there. So this is one kind of evidence that how our students are performing in our BA program. But when we are talking about a program which is coming up, then definitely there are some other components that we have to understand, that why our BA economics programs are getting admission to the very good universities around the world. So the first thing is definitely the kind of teaching that we impart in our programs. So that is one of the most important aspects. And now there is a consensus, I think, among the good universities that this is a place from where students come and they got good education. So this is the first thing. The second thing is definitely the kind of say in a PhD process, what is very important is the recommendation letter that teachers write, and when we write a recommendation letter, if some other person in the university where I'm sending the recommendation also know me, then they believe on our writing aspect, right? So that is a kind of a connection. Since most of the what Professor Malhotra has pointed out, it is very important that since a large number of our faculties have done their PhDs or some postdocs in different very good universities around the world, so they have a very good global connection in that particular field, and that will definitely helps our master's student. That will definitely help our master's student to get admission in the good PhD programs.
Thank you. What is the second part?
Yeah, the second part is it possible to have a dissertation in MA economics? And then since it is first year of MA economics here at Jindal, whether how do we ensure the diversity of students on campus?
I answered that question on the thesis. In fact, that was part of my statement. There will writing a thesis in MA economics is obligatory. Of course, in circumstances where a person is not able to do, there will be an option to take 2 core courses or 2 elective courses to compensate for the credit that you are not able to acquire for not wanting to write an writing a thesis. But thesis is a salient aspect of our MA program. So that answers your question. On diversity, since I'm on the mic and if Dean allows me, I think the unique feature of Jindal's global university is its diversity of faculty level, at the faculty level, and in terms of students from all over the country and even from abroad. So I don't see you finding any other university, at least in our country, which has that element of diversity. For your information, there are about 18 or maybe 20% faculty members in our university which come from foreign nationals. They come from different countries all over the world. So you have 20% of faculty which is foreign national, and if I remember it correctly, about 12% of students, when I last remember reading that figure, are students from different with different nationalities. So diversity is very much a part and parcel of the culture that JGU is trying to establish and propagate.
Yeah. So
Okay, go to the next question.
Now we'll proceed to another question. Yeah. So the question from Sandeep Saha and Shiv Srivastava and Archisman Chaudhary. And they are asking almost a similar question, that what are the career opportunities in public policy and economics, and what are the career opportunities in public finance, and does the public finance coupled with the technological development have the potential what is it, the technological development have the potential to take the better policy course, better public policy out of interest, and also the kind of job that we can get after completion of PP and economics.
Okay, I think you know, Swagato, you want to essay this, to take this question?
Yes. Well, about the public policy, as I said in my opening remark, that we have, we try to bring both theoretical understanding, a critical understanding of the issues, as well as your analytical skill. And so towards that end, we do expect that you will have a wide range of career options and the organizations which are going to accept you. As of now, we have students who have got placed at various organizations around the country. So where Department of Science and Technology, Public Affairs Center, then Project Disha of UNDP, Tech Mahindra Foundation, Pollution Action Group, Public Policy Research Center, and so on. I think what's important in all of this is to club it together, the kind of career options that public policy offers you. One is research-oriented work, which many of the think tanks would prefer, including think tanks like Observer Research Foundation and so on. You can also get various fellowships which have started to come up. We have our students who are part of the Prime Minister's Rural Development Fellowship. That fellowship currently is closed, but there are other fellowships which have come up, like legislative fellowship, which is called LAMPS. Then there's Gandhi Fellowship. We have students who have been successful in getting these fellowships. We also have NGOs which take our students. We have Niti Aayog, where our students have been working. We have various corporate sector into both their corporate social responsibility and their own think tanks, where students have been absorbed. One good example, as I just said, Tech Mahindra Foundation. So similarly, you have all these various opportunities which are now present before the students. And so that's one. The other part of our students where they can do capstone, which is this, you work almost full-time with an organization for close to 6 months, which is the last semester. We have 4 semesters. In the last semester, the students can opt for either to do a dissertation or capstone. Now, capstone is something which comes from the architecture, where the building, when it's finished, you put a stone to mark the end of that that structure. So capstone here means that, and this is where the students are placed with an organization of their choice. Sometimes the career placement cell also helps them. So it goes both ways. You can choose an organization, or an organization can be found for you. And those organizations then allow you to apply all that you have learned in the last 1.5 years, in the last 3 semesters. And through that, one expects that you will learn more. You will learn, gain an understanding how real life organizations work, and then how real life policy making, advocacy, etc. work. And what we have seen that many of these organizations, if they're satisfied with the performance of the student, then they also make a job offer to the student. So you can get absorbed in the same organizations. Of course, it depends on to you whether you want to continue with that organization. And plus, we also have a career placement cell, both dedicated person for our school, and also school university-wide. We have one department which looks after that. They also take care of your, they give you training into your writing your CV, preparing you through mock interviews. They help you to present your before the interviewers, And obviously, they also organize many campus interviews. So increasingly, our students are getting jobs right after doing the MA in Public Policy program. Many of them, as we have heard, prefer to go and for further studies. They have been successfully, they have been successful in getting admissions in PhD programs and also further studies. So something like, as someone had asked, that if I have understood your question correctly, that given that the technology is coming in and various changes which are happening in the entire country and around the world, so if you do a course in public policy and you specialize in public finance, now public finance is a different thing, which Professor Malhotra specializes in. He can come back and tell it to you. But generally, if you are looking into the relationship between finance and development, and can you have a career in that? Of course, you can have a career in that. Sometimes some of these issues are too technical, too specialized, and an MA Public Policy program, which Professor Bhuvaneshwari Raman said, that aims to cater to a slightly generic view. You will always not get that high level of technical knowledge which is required. We should be very clear about your expectations and what we can offer you. So if you are looking that after doing MA in Public Policy, I will become a specialist in what is known as the fintech, the financial technologies, then I'm afraid that not. We can offer you a flavor of it. We can set a window to that world where you understand the issues, but I don't think you can claim yourself to be a fintech specialist. For that, you need further studies. But anything that you do, you need an understanding of how the country functions, how the economy functions, what the policy making environment is, how the various things influence each other. And if you are looking at a policy of financial technology, that how that is going to help, then obviously this course will be helpful. But if you are simply looking at to become a fintech specialist, then I'm afraid this is not the right program for you. Maybe MA Public Economics is the program for you.
No, yeah, or somebody wanting to do fintech can consider our business school as well as the School of Banking and Finance. I'm going to invite Rajiv to say a little bit about public finance. But before that, I want to say that the public policy program that we've already been running and the sorts of things we teach equips students very well to tackle the civil service examinations. It's not that they need to go to quota and get stranded with COVID and plead to various governments to take back home. They don't have to put themselves in that situation, because having learned how to learn, having learned critical thinking, and having a very broad range with a fair amount of depth in certain areas in which you can specialize within public policy, like we offer a concentration in public health. We could be offering a concentration soon in public finance even. It depends on student interest. We have the faculty capacity. We could do that. So civil service exams is an option because this training in public policy equips you very well. I have been with some associates in the USA, been looking at the public administration questions that are asked in the IAS and the Central Services examination, and I find that they are very outdated. I mean, they ask you to read American writers on the subject who were publishing between 1960 and 1970. And there's no reference really to any publication after 1970, because some old person must have drawn up that question paper for the UPSC in public administration and provided a set of readings. However, it's now a very demanding program, the entry into the civil service. You have 2 stages and you have an interview. So even though if you look at technically the formal syllabus printed in the UPSC guidelines for the different subjects that you could take, that's all very old-fashioned and out of date. But if you do an MA in public policy with us, you are going to be very smart in being able to tackle that and bring a certain amount of freshness, which will make the examiner who's looking at your answer sheet sit up and say, now here's somebody who's saying something interesting and fresh, and is not repeating what some long dead American public administration writer wrote in his textbook. So even though the syllabus as given by the UPSC sounds old-fashioned, examiners are looking for freshness and intelligence, and that you can be sure that you are well equipped to tackle civil service exams if you graduate with us. I'll just ask Rajiv to say a bit about public finance.
I will, but I just wanted to share that there are 5 options, and I'm raising my fingers, that are open to a MPP graduate from our university. And in the last 8 years, all 5 options have been populated by our graduates. The first one is government, either through civil services or through lateral entry at state level, or through programs which are being run by the government as fellowship programs. So there have been students who have got into civil services from our MPP. There are fellows, Prime Minister's Rural Development Program Fellowship, LAMP Fellowship and other fellowships, and there are MPP graduates working at state level. The second is NGOs, as Swagato said. Several NGOs have been staffed by our students. The third is in the corporate social responsibility domain, corporates are taking in MPP graduates. Fourth is corporate sector, and the fifth is further studies and academics. Now, among these 5, at least 2 would be open to MA Economics graduates as well. Now, the question about public finance. Now, the demand for public finance would be either from those private consultancies who are offering advisory services to the government, or think tanks, or the government proper. And in each of these categories of opportunities, there are ample scope for good graduates with certain specializations to apply and get jobs. So I just wanted to sum up that there are 5 areas for MPP graduates where they can go, and there is evidence that our colleague Hemant can supply to those who want in terms of placements in these 5 categories over the last 8 years.
Yes, sir. So now, apart from these 5, we have another segment of students from engineering background. There are few students from the same background, and they say they have got experience in working construction engineering and electrical engineering. Whether this course is suitable for us to join out of our own interest, in case if we join us, what are the future ahead for us? So
let me ask our engineer who was in an engineering school doing architecture to answer that question. Bhuvana, tackle that question, please.
Yeah. As for the engineering graduates, there's quite a lot of opportunity, because one of the areas that the state is really short of is people with technical knowledge. Can you hear? Yeah. And for example, when we were doing, when the government was trying to, we were working with the government of Karnataka closely when they were implementing this program called Bhumi, which is a e-governance program. One issue they faced is they did not have technical skills to evaluate e-tenders itself. Okay. And the second thing is, if you are an electrical engineer, energy is a big sector that's going to open up, and people who are working with energy policy are very few. See, in the past, people who came to public policy or social policy used to be those with social science degree. But increasingly, technology is going to be a major influence in the way our lives are going to be affected and the way policies are also going to be constructed. Therefore, there is enough domain where you can intervene if you are an engineer. We had the very first batch which we taught had a majority of engineers. For whatever reasons, yes, they worked and they wanted to shift their career, and they moved into public policy. Some of them, one of them also went on to get the Prime Minister's fellowship and is now working with the government with various programs. Okay. There are also private sector which is opening up. Your consultancies, they are looking for engineers. And I know this from my own experience when soon after my PhD, one of the reasons I was offered a job with the bank was also because they were looking for someone who could have both the technical degree and an understanding of social science. Say, if you are a civil engineer, for example, infrastructure plus public policy is something many of these international agencies are looking for and infrastructure companies are looking for. So yes, there are opportunities. Not all of you need to go the traditional pathway of moving into sector. There are also foundations that are opening up, both in energy, both in technology, and also each of these foundations. For example, Tech Mahindra, whatever Rajiv will be able to tell you much more. Their interest is energy. They are looking for people who can work with energy. So particularly in the private sector, which is a growing field, you have enough opportunities coming up if you're an engineer. That's my.
Okay.
Can I just add that those of you who have engineering degrees and are applying for MPP program, you are not going to be the first one. Every batch of ours in the last 8 years has had, as Bhuvana said, about 5 to 7 engineers, and they're all doing well. More importantly, those engineers who want to sit the civil service exam, this MPP program is the best possible platform that you could have.
Yeah, sure, sir. And now we have questions from Rahul Malik and Ashisman Chaudhary.
Just one other point. I mean, as a general policy, this has been well established in the history of public policy, which began in the United States as a discipline, that no matter what your discipline is, whether you're an Ayurveda doctor, and we've had an Ayurveda student who is now working in the World Health Organization as an expert, having done public policy. She did Ayurveda and public policy and is now in the World Health Organization. So if you're a doctor, an engineer, no matter what, to get the public policy foundation is going to be very important, because then you are eligible for a lot of careers.
Fine. Right, sir. So now the next questions are from Rahul Malik and Ashisman Chaudhary, and they almost have a similar question, whether this current COVID-19 effect is going to have some effect in the internship placement or the final placement during the last 2 years or after 2 years. Sir.
No, this is an area where the honest answer is we don't know what will be the course and shape of this particular epidemic. We know that epidemics run their course and somehow end, but it's difficult to say whether that would happen to this particular epidemic. What I can say is that our university is very conscious that many of the sort of institutions that were able to take on interns, provide them the space, their business operations may have contracted, travel to different places may become more difficult, and for anticipating all this, we are developing a whole range of learning opportunities within the university, which basically entail using a lot of the technology that we are now all getting used to, like this one, online learning. So the university is thinking of programs in collaboration with many. We have a large number of international collaborators, and so right now we have worked out programs for online courses with the University of Arizona, which can lead to credits and even a dual degree. So it's possible, to compensate for the learning that you might miss in case you're not actually able to go and do an internship physically in another location. But more than most places, we have set up an online learning center with a director who was an alumnus of this university, an American who's called Jeremy Wade, who runs the Jindal Center for Social Impact and Entrepreneurship. He's now taken charge of providing these online learning opportunities in case. So what do you do in an internship? You basically learn by doing. But if you can't actually go and have that experience somewhere, we can find substitutes for that. That's all I can say at this point. But on the other hand, one hopes that as the UGC and the government expects, we will be able to welcome back our students on campus as usual on the 3rd of August, and all of you, the new batch, who are going to join in the 1st of September, and all would be well. But if it is not, we are very resourceful in finding opportunities to compensate for the learning that you would have got from internships by connecting you to institutions where you might otherwise have done the internship. So it's possible for us, say, to work an online learning program or an online work program with the Center for Public Policy Research in Cochin, with the ORF in Delhi, or with Niti Aayog, without having to physically go there.
Yeah. So, sir, next question from Suparna Agarwal is very simple and short. Since we also are left only with that 8 minutes time, what do we study? What should we study to know more about public policy awareness? What do we study to know more about public policy awareness?
You read everyday newspaper.
Okay.
Every day we're discussing about, every day that's what we are discussing. That whether, for instance, right now the big debate that when should the lockdown end and what will happen next. That is public policy. Public policy is about how the country as a whole is going to function. How about as Bhuvana has said, how resources are allocated, how duties are assigned, how the economy functions. Now, increasingly, there will be a far greater role of public policy because everything seems to be in shambles. We need to put things together. We need to go back and look into our welfare system. Why should our migrant workers be left on their own? What have we not done? Why didn't we have a system in place? Why, what kind of system we had in our public health system? Why there is no the command structure? Why every day the various kinds of directives are constantly changing? Is that desirable, or what kind of new kind of system that we need? Everywhere you will find a discussion, and you are coming to study public policy at a juncture where it seems that we are passing from an older system to an entirely new structure which is about to come, where there will be a lot of.
Yeah.
So I think that is
so what to say. Bhuvana, you want to say something on this?
Yeah.
Did you?
So that question is for you.
Yeah.
The students.
Listen.
Yes.
One second. I wanted Bhuvana to come in, because I think the student may be thinking, oh, is there a reading list that you will send us that we should study beforehand, before joining the program, that might be helpful, give us a good start. Shogata's advice is think, use your head, think about current problems, and so what would you say to the student? I mean, one of the things we've done for the undergraduates, of course, is we are sending them some exercises and some materials that would help them come into the BA economics program or the social science program with some confidence. But for the postgraduate students, we don't have necessarily a reading list, we are a very interdisciplinary program. Some of the are engineers, some of them may have a medical background. So, Bona, what's your advice? What would you say we should ask people to read?
Mine is also as what Swagato said, read the editorials regularly of all the newspapers. But I think public policy is about life around you. Just be sensitive and observe how people around you are living. And the third thing is I learned public policy largely from the fictions. They're very good fictions. That Great Derangement by Amitav Ghosh will tell you the politics of climate change. And anybody can look at it. And I learned about Mumbai's politics from A Fine Balance, which was, I forget the name of the author. Yeah, it's Rohinton Mystery. So a lot of it can be read from the fiction. So read as widely as possible. And yeah, you don't need a standard textbook list for understanding and appreciating public policy. And yeah, and my friend always runs movies while teaching public policy. So just look around you. All of these reflect society and societal issues, and see how it is framed and how it is unpacked and with what effect. That's what you need to develop. There's nothing like it comes out of a textbook. Yeah, that's my advice.
Debajit will advise you to read Rabindranath Tagore, listen to his songs, think about the profundity of his thoughts while also having an enjoyable experience. So really, it's not, I mean, once you come to us, we'll take you in hand. You don't have to worry about, preparedness in that sense with a pre-syllabus, but all of these are good ideas. Rajiv, you want to say something?
Nothing. I would make your life simple by just suggesting read Indian Express or Hindu, any of the two papers regularly, including the edit page. It'll solve half your problem.
Right. Sir, we have so many questions, but we are very, positive of time. So I'll take up this important question where a student is, looking forward to grow her career in academia. And Professor Sarkar was talking about, and he was describing about how should we go ahead. So can you throw some light, Professor Swagato, that the student who wants to prepare for academia?
Prepare for academia?
Yes.
For further study?
Teacher. Or wants to be want to be a teacher.
Okay. So now, as I said right at the beginning, that we have, we try to combine both theoretical studies along with your analytical skills. So there is enormous emphasis on learning theories, developing a systematic understanding of it, plus your research skills, which you have heard from other faculty members, my colleagues here. So what you can do if you're interested in further studies is to select a set of courses in elective courses in consultation with your faculty member and you develop a particular area which you want to work on and which you are interested in, and then write a dissertation on that particular topic, and that allows you to develop what we might call a vertical understanding of an issue. You can dig through it and you can go deeper into that particular issue, explore it and understand it. That will provide you a very good platform to go for your further research, because we have students who have moved on to do MPhil, and some of them have also got direct PhD offers. And once you can show when you apply for your PhD or MPhil program that you have the dissertation, you have a set of courses around that, so where you can claim to know a particular topic or an area very well, then your chances of getting in admission is very high, including getting scholarship. As my colleagues have said, that most of us have studied at various universities around the world, and our research has also taken us to various places. Most of us belong to various research networks. So when you apply abroad, you also consult one of us, and then they put you in touch and help you in selecting universities and the departments. And most of the time, what happens, as Debajit also said, that when we write a reference for you, it carries certain weight and your chances of getting admission is much higher. So
I also have to
obviously,
say though, yeah, we also have a PhD program in
yes,
our university, and you're the chair of the doctoral committee.
absolutely.
You can
Yeah.
take special interest in someone
Yes.
in the academic line. I think we've run out of time. What I'd suggest you do, Hema, is to share with us the questions, and we can answer them by email. It's not you know.
Certainly, sir. I will. There are around 8 to 10 questions remains to be there still remains to be answered. So I'll just mail it to you all,
Yeah,
and
we'll do
once
that.
I have your answer, I'll distribute to student. So like the questions are from what are the electives can be taken, scholarship, etc. So there are so many common
We
questions
can
as well.
answer these
So I'll send
email.
it to you after this session.
All right.
By
So
evening, I'll
I think
post it to you.
yeah. So we let's end punctually as we started, and I'm very grateful to my colleagues for having spared the time to join us. We're all extraordinarily busy these days with classes online, and online classes take more preparation time. It's very intensive, and so I'm very grateful to my colleagues for joining us. And I hope this was a useful session for our audience. And thank you, Hemant, for making this possible.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, sir. Thank you, professors. Thank you all the very best. Thank you, students. See you very soon at campus. Good luck.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.